Hi, I'm Paul Germain, and welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, typically we cover a wide variety of subjects, and we aim to deliver information that will help you make better decisions and have more fun on the water. But sometimes we take a little side trip down what we think is going to be an interesting road, and that's the case today. Earlier this summer, I was at the New Hampshire Boat Museum, and I happened to notice a very intriguing display of model boats. And today we're fortunate enough to have Fred Clausen, the collector of those boats, to tell us more about them. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be here.
Fred, yeah, really cool show, very unusual hobby. But before we get into it, can you share a little bit about either your background in boating and or your background in the boat modeling business?
Sure can. My whole life I've been a boater from the Adirondacks to Lake Winnipesaukee, going back to probably age 5 or 6, and had my first toy model boats back around 10, and I actually still have a couple of the motors that were in my collection at that point. And then about 20 years ago, I bought some cottages on the lake, and I wanted to use the boats as displays on the shelves in the cottages until I realized they had a lot of value. And then I realized I didn't want the kids playing with them, so I decided to not put them in the cottages and then keep collecting. And for the last 20 years, the collection has really grown tremendously.
Wow, wow. So you've got a whole variety of boats.
Yes.
Of different types and sizes and models. And
yeah, they go from about 5 or 6 inches up to about 3 feet.
Wow.
So they're all different sizes.
Wow. Well, that's the focus of the show today.
Yes,
This sounds like the perfect place to do it. Yeah. So why don't we get right into it?
Okay, sounds good.
Well, Fred, you've got just an immense collection, but we've narrowed down that a little bit today to give people a sampling of some of the more interesting boats. Now, you've got an interesting boat there on display. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the first one we're going to go with is one of my smallest boats. It's 7 1/4 inches long. It looks like it's never been played with by anybody because the colors are so great. On the back, you've got the on and off switch, which is a lever, and then you have the inside is a place where the single battery goes. It's a C cell.
A C cell.
And note on the engine that the top of it is a very rectangular piece, and it's a very small engine because it is such a small boat.
Oh, about what year was that built, do you think?
That was probably 55, somewhere around there. I'm not really sure. We don't know who the manufacturer is because a lot of people in Japan made the small boats and put different brand names on them.
Right, okay. Well, let's take a look at our next boat here.
The next boat we know is made by the company called Famous.
Famous.
It's 9 inches, a little bit bigger. It's unusual because the windshield is a tip windshield. Most of them are stationary.
Wow.
And this has a flip on it, reach the 2 C-cell batteries that go in.
So you don't pull it out physically like we saw on the last boat. It actually hinges.
It's on a hinge.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's got a little top on it too, right?
Little bright yellow top made of plastic.
Bimini, yeah.
But you can see by the condition that it has been played with, as these are toys. They were not made as collectible items, that they are made as toys.
Right. What material is this made out of?
This is all wood. The first grouping we're having here are made all wood.
All wood. And I can see some little bow rails up there, and it's got a little spotlight on the front deck.
And on the back is back side is the rudder is missing on this one, but it has a 2-blade prop on the back.
I see, white and a red scheme. Now, this one I noticed Fred has the box with it. How is that a significant part of the collecting boats like this?
Yes, that adds probably about 20 to 25% of the value just to have the original box. The graphics on the box are great. The company name on the box. Each box does not necessarily depict the actual boat that's in there. Sometimes they're generic, but this is the box is one of the most important things on the model.
So that adds value.
Yes, it definitely has value.
Very interesting, yeah. Well, let's take a look at another example here.
This one is a little bit bigger. This is 9 1/2 inches. It is made by a company called Rico.
That was a big name.
Very big name. Yeah, made in Japan also. But the coloring on this boat, it's the only one I have in the collection that has these the dark blue and the yellow-orange base.
Yellow-orange, yeah.
This is interesting because there's a tiller rudder on the back, so you'd have to set it to go in a certain direction if you ever wanted to get your boat back.
How do you do that? Is there a way to fix it in place?
There's little on the top, and then you want to make sure it stays up.
Okay, so there's a way to fix it in a certain direction.
Correct. And this is an on and off switch. You pull it up to start the engine and push it down to shut the engine off.
Was that unusual?
No, that was one of the more common ways that they did with the switches. Some are levers and some are the up and down. And you can see the battery holder in the middle and the engine.
And this has got kind of a curved windshield. The last one we saw had a straight windshield.
Yes, this is the most common, is the curved windshield. Most of the boats have that.
Now, did you see that change in any certain year, or was that... Were the
was really
straight
the
windshields and the curved windshields at the same time?
It's really the manufacturer who decided which it would be.
Manufacturer, okay.
And the style of the boat. The flip down one is more an old-fashioned boat and probably would definitely be an earlier boat.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. So we've got another model here.
This is extremely unusual.
Oh.
It's about 10 inches. You can see, I'm going to lift it up slightly, you can see underneath the propeller, and it's variable.
Oh, right.
This is called a mystery boat. So as it goes along, if it hits something, that's why it has the metal strips on the front and metal strips on the back.
Okay.
If it hits something, it changes direction and goes somewhere else. They also added a compass on the front so that you knew which direction it was going in.
Oh, that's interesting.
This too has the flip-up battery holder.
It's hinged, yeah.
It's hinged, and inside on this particular one, you can see there is a label that was passed in going out of Japan into the United States for distribution.
Yeah. And it's got a stand, and then it's got the box again. Again, is the box significant in this case as well?
Yeah, this is the only one I've seen of this particular design boat. I've never seen another one. I was happy to get it. This one has the engine mounted vertically rather than horizontally.
Oh, yeah.
So it goes down, the shaft goes down to meet the propeller.
Oh, right, yeah, because it's got a different propeller arrangement there. Yeah, and that's a little bigger than some of the other ones we're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah, and all wood still.
All
right?
wood, still all wood, yes.
Yeah. How about value? You know, as we're talking about different boats, you know, if I've got, I don't know, I want to buy a 28-foot Chris Craft. There's a blue book or there's an NADA guide, and I can refer to these and establish a value. How are values established for boats like this?
Depends who wants it and what they want to pay and if they need it in their collection.
Yeah.
There are no book values out there. There's no blue book. There's no collector's book. It's very hard to determine value. Some boats are just, there's a lot of them out there and the values are not very big. This particular one that we're looking at, because of the condition and because of the uniqueness, the value to me is very high. So I probably would have paid almost anything to get that and add to my collection.
Is that right? Yeah.
Whereas I have others that are in great condition, but you can find them on eBay for a very reasonable price, and they still don't sell. So it's a very variable subject.
Yeah. Now, does it relate to the economy enter into it, or any of these other factors drive the trends in these boats?
Yeah, since 08 came along and the economy changed, everything has changed in the model boat collecting. A lot of the values have gone down. But once again, if somebody really wants it for their collection, they're going to pay.
They're going to get it.
Yep.
Well, Fred, you've got such an interesting collection with a lot of different types of boats. This one we're going to look at next is kind of different because it's an RC boat, but instead of radio control, that means remote control, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The original RC boats.
The original RC. Yeah. Let's take a look at this one.
This one also has probably never been played with. It's by a manufacturer called KS, and you can tell by the paint on there that it's crisp and clean.
It is.
And you can see in the very front here is the battery holder, and it has about a 15 to 20 foot cord, so that limits the distance that the boat can go from the person controlling it.
Right.
It has an on and off switch and the red buttons in the front. But this one is again in perfect condition with the round windshield.
Yes.
Most of the boats have flags.
They do.
The American flag, old-fashioned American flag for boating.
Yeah. This one looks like it has a horn on the front deck and some vents.
Yeah.
And it's got the pinstripe. Now, when did you get this boat?
This one I probably had for about 12 years. Again, it's unusual being the remote control box. And I have a few that are in not as good condition, but this one is unique because, again, of the condition. You can see the cord comes out the back.
Yeah.
And you can tilt the rudder to go the direction you want the boat to come back to you in.
That's a nice boat. I like that boat. Well, let's take a look at another one here. We got a black one.
Okay. This is one by a company called IMP, International Model Product Company. And this is a standard color, red and black, that you see on a lot of the boats.
Oh, really?
This one is kind of different because it has a spotlight on the front, and you
Yes.
can actually tip it in different directions.
Oh, you can.
And it's got wires, so it's hooked up to the battery.
Oh.
And on the inside, it's got the tiller, rudder, and the
Yeah.
batteries go in the middle there.
Two batteries?
Two batteries go in there, and that's there. Most of the boats have D-cell batteries.
D-cell, yeah.
Yep. And you can see again the U.S. flag, the old-fashioned boating U.S. flag.
And
in
I
there.
see the little life preserver here on the
Every
front
boat
deck.
has a life preserver
that, I like
somewhere.
that,
Yeah,
I like
just
that.
to make it look good.
Now, where did you pick up this boat, Fred?
This one on eBay. Most of my boats come from eBay, and I probably had this one 8 or 9 years. I don't
yeah.
remember.
Oh.
I do have so many that I don't remember when I got them. To be very honest with you, that's something I have to deal with.
Oh, that's a really nice, that's a really sharp boat. I like that. Let's take a look at the next boat here.
This one is made by a company called ITO.
ITO. That's Japanese, isn't
That's
it?
Japanese, and it does stand for Mr. Ito.
Mr. Ito.
And a lot of people think it's an International Trade Organization, but it isn't. It's a Mr. Ito.
Okay.
And the boats of this era are unusual because they have the bubble windshield.
I see that.
And
yes.
this one came to me in pretty beat up condition, and a very good friend of mine in Texas, Jim Hagler, restored it for me and put on some new parts.
Okay.
And I know we're going to talk about parts, but these are all original replacement parts.
Yeah.
And that adds to the value if they are original replacement parts.
This reminds me of an old Chris Craft. It's got some dual horns up the front here, and it's got the headlight. It's got some vents back there. And is this the push-pull switch for the engine?
This is the push-pull switch for the engine, and it's a very special engine.
Oh, it is.
Because it's an ITO engine, and it has the green cover on the top of the engine.
Oh, that's
And
unusual?
That's unusual, and the ITO logo is on the green cover. So it cannot be fraudulent. It's the only way it comes is with this engine with that ITO on it.
Now, does that help its value in terms of authenticity and that sort of thing?
It does. An ITO is probably the favorite manufacturer and the most expensive collectible in the industry today.
Really?
They make the nicest boats and the best quality.
Now, has this one been played with a little bit?
This one has been played with.
Yeah.
It's been restored a little bit, but not totally. So it still has the step pieces on it.
That's a great little boat. And then we've got this one here.
Now, this one is, we don't know the manufacturer on it. It's about 12 inches long. It's called the Gold Cup Bracer.
Yeah.
And it's unusual because the engine has a black metal cover on it.
Right.
And I don't know why it's on there other than to protect it from damage, but it's the only boat that I have that has that cover.
Yeah.
It also has the push-pull switch for the on and off, and it is a race boat, and
You can see that. It gets the fin on it.
the fin on it. A lot of boat collectors have modified their boats and added the fins on to the boat, but this is an original one, number 7, the Gold Cup Racer.
It looks like it's got a stepped hull on it.
It does.
very
That's
unusual.
very unusual on the stepped hull.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I don't know, it's got a different hull. It's not like a V hull, it's more like a flat hull.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the back, yep, definitely flat.
And it's got the curved windshield, but it's got the molding on it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really something. And how long have you had this boat?
That one is one of my earlier ones. I'm going to say probably about 15 years. I remember buying it from the particular fella in New York when I got it. Paid a lot of money for it back then, but it was worth it. And I've had other collectors ask if I want to sell it, and no, I don't. So only one I've seen.
That's a rare one. Now, if we widen up our camera angle just a little bit, we're going to show the parts, and you've got the parts over there. Maybe we could bring them into the picture frame. Now, the reason I thought we might want to talk about parts is my experience with more larger boats, antique and classic boats, is that the authenticity of the parts is very important. So we put those over there so we can see the parts and still see you.
Okay.
That would be good. Is that true? Is having authentic parts, genuine parts, does that add to the value of the boat?
Definitely, and especially if you have the parts in the bags that they originally came in.
Oh, okay.
You can tell by the blue top and the red. It says made in Japan, as again most everything.
Yes.
But they have windshields, horns, antennas are probably about the hardest ones to find.
Oh.
Spotlights, knife switches for the on and off, a lever switch for the on and off. This particular one is a steering wheel, which is also doubles as a on and off switch.
Really?
And here we have what's called a Buick ornament.
Okay.
That goes on the front.
On the bow there.
Yeah, right on the bow.
Yeah.
And there are extra replacement flags you can probably see here too.
Oh, yeah.
And different size scoops and different size windshields.
Now this
So-
has to be, is probably getting more and more difficult to get this sort of inventory parts, I would guess, right?
Yes, a lot of people will buy beat up boats that have good parts and then take the parts off for other boats and just trash the wooden boat.
Right.
And you can see the picture here that
Oh,
shows
yeah.
the different design of all the different pieces that you can get. This is just a sampling of the pieces, and this is the way they sold it in the store. These little areas would be filled with multiple copies of the particular item.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, you know, these older classic model boats came from a variety of sources and regions, some from Japan and some from the U.S. Now, this boat here, the Fleet Line that you've got in front of you, that's kind of a combination of the two, right?
It is. This particular one has come from Japan, and it is the Fleet Line company that most of the kids in the 50s and 60s know about. A couple of pilots flying for overseas freight companies liked the whole idea about the boats coming from Japan that they bought the company and they brought it over to Van Nuys, California, and they decided to make all the boats over there. But this again, one in particular, is made in Japan. It's what I call the original Fleet Line. It's a very unusual box with the original Fleet Line logos on it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And in great condition.
How long have you had this one?
This one probably 7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years.
Again, I lose track on the number of years.
Right,
so.
right.
But it's in great condition, and that adds a lot. And you can see that it has the on and off switch, which is a lever in the back, and it has the tiller handle as far as the rudder.
Yeah.
And
Now, how long could a boat like this operate with a battery power?
probably a half an hour,
Half an hour?
something
Yeah.
like that. Some of them take C batteries, some of them take D batteries.
Right.
So the larger the battery, but usually the larger the battery, there's more options to run. This one does not have any operable lights on it.
Any lights, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. That's a really nice looking boat. Oh, we take a look at this one here. Now this has got the box again, and as you've expressed before, the box is an important component of this, right?
Yes, this is another one that's made by Union Craft, and they had a generic box. You never really could tell looking at the front of the box what model was in there.
Really?
That was their standard design. Shows a cabin cruiser on the box, but this one is a runabout.
Okay.
And this is made of all wood, but it's a lighter weight wood. That's not really a balsa wood, but it's a lighter weight wood. And this has the gear shift in the back
Yeah.
for on and off.
So you get the stern light.
Stern light.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't work as far as it's not hooked up to the battery, but it does go up and down.
Very real. You get a bow light up here.
Bow light, that does hook up to the battery. And it's got an unusual basic ornament on the front, nothing fancy like the Buick ornament.
What sort of motor is this running in?
This one
Is
is
it a horseshoe or?
no, this one is just a basic regular small boat motor. Comes off easily.
Yeah.
And you can see in the front the battery holder here, and
I see.
the horseshoe motors are for the bigger boats. You'll see one coming up in a few
Oh,
minutes.
they are. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, speaking of other boats here, let me move to our next display. This is a very interesting color on this boat. You don't see many green boats, do you?
Well, not this shady green. This
Not
is
this shady
a pale green. This one has looks like it's been repainted.
Oh,
it
okay.
probably needs some additional work on it. It is in played with condition, but it has the very nice Buick ornament on the front.
right.
And it's got the tiller rudder in the back, and it's about 14 inches. And inside of it, it has the horseshoe engine that we were talking about. And you can just see it on the front here.
Oh,
It
yes.
says the KK. That was the manufacturer of this particular horseshoe engine.
So that's a little unusual.
Yes, a headlight does work. It's wired up to the battery. That makes it unusual.
Oh, okay. Well, we've got one last boat, if I can swap you here.
Yeah.
I can bring that one in.
This is a very, very special boat.
It is.
This is the Sea Eagle made by ITO, and that also has the horseshoe engine, which will be hard to see in there.
Yeah.
This is made by...
Why do they call it a horseshoe engine? Because of the shape of it? It's
the
like
shape
a horseshoe?
of it, the magnet is in the shape of a horseshoe, and totally different operation than the small engine we saw in the previous boat.
Oh, okay.
This is special because it's been totally remodeled. It's the Sea Eagle is the name of the boat, and totally remodeled by a friend of mine down in in Arkansas, John Guest,
Yeah.
and he does spectacular work.
Yeah.
It's got the tiller rudder, the gear shift as far as the on and off switch. And if you look even closely inside, you can see that there is a dashboard
Oh, really?
in that. Yes. The steering wheel is ornamental. It is not part of the on and off switch, but
Okay.
this is unique because of the colors, the black and the pink.
That's very unusual.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Right. It's got quite a horn here too. It's got dual
The
horns
dual
coming around the
horns,
same
yes.
same place. This is loaded up, isn't it?
Yeah, and it has the operating red and green lights.
Oh, it does.
So that when you put the batteries in, it does work. And anything that John works on always works when it's redone.
Oh, it does. He's a
Yes,
good. I wanted to talk about that for a minute, just as an overview subject. People as they watch the show, they might say, "Geez, maybe I've seen a couple models, or I'd like to get involved with that." But maybe the models that they've seen or can get a hold of aren't in tip-top shape. So, collectors like yourself, you focus on the collecting more than the restoration. Are there restoration craftspeople that you could, if you got a boat, you could send it to them and they could fix it up for you?
There are. I've been lucky enough to find 3 of these fellas, one in Minneapolis, one in Arkansas, and one in Texas. I don't have the skills to work on them myself. I don't understand how they do it. It's when they're done with it, all 3 of them, it's newer than new.
Is that right?
It's just spectacular.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if it's missing parts, I'll furnish the parts to them, but they do the paint job, and it's brushed on in all cases. But the finish, and you can see this, the sheen on there is
Yes.
just absolutely
It's like
perfect.
a piano.
Yes.
Yeah.
They.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it. This boat never looked so good when it was sold originally. And they usually, they restore my boats, I ask them to do it in the original colors.
Yes.
Some people get fancy and make some interesting colors just to have it look different.
Right.
I like the original colors, but I sure do love the creativity that these guys have.
Yeah. Well, Fred, the variety of models is just crazy.
It's endless.
Yeah, it's endless, yeah. And this boat you've got in front of you right now is another example of the differences these models come in, right?
Yes. This one is called a double ender because of the rear end, which maybe you can see a little better if I turn it slightly. And this one came from eBay to a friend of mine, John, in Arkansas. And he did a little bit of touch-up work, and he told me it's the only one that he has ever seen of this particular model.
Because the unusual stern.
The unusual stern. He did some basic cleaning of the model, but he did not repaint it.
Yeah.
It's unusual because of the gold bottom on the boat.
Oh,
I have never seen another boat with a gold bottom.
really?
I'm sure there are, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
And when he did the cleanup, you can see a little bit of the nail heads have come through the
right
top of the
here,
deck
here.
there. They were not countersunk down into the wood like they are a lot of times.
Okay.
This has the famous Buick ornament on the front, a horn and an active light on the front that lights up. It's white. And it does have the flag on the back and the plunger for the on and off.
Yeah.
And when John cleans all these have a slight touch of gold to them, brass. A lot of times they're pure silver.
Really?
But this kind of blends in with the base color. As
does.
you can see on the bottom that even the shaft for the propeller and the propeller itself are brass.
All the running gear.
Everything, so it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
And one of these days, and the windshield on the second cockpit is unusual. I have never seen another boat with that windshield on the back.
So it's got some very unusual details to it.
Yes, yeah, and it still is in great shape.
Yeah, that's a beauty. Well, let's look at our second one here.
The second one
It's
is...
got the box and everything on this one, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, this was a kit. This is made by K&O.
Oh.
And K&O was the initial people over in Japan that the Fleet Line bought out. And this is one of the first kits that were made. It's called the Speedster. And it was the 1952 model. And it was built from scratch by another friend of mine, Jim Hagler, in Arlington, Texas. And this has the famous horseshoe engine, as you can see on the inside.
All right.
But this came in pieces on a slat board, and
see.
he cut them out and he added the colors. He's particular on how his boat looks.
Yeah.
And it's got the lever for the on and off switch, and it's
Okay.
got the red and green lights on the front.
Yeah.
And it's just, his refinishing job too is spectacular, but this came to him in pieces and he put it all together.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things I like is the varnished deck. You don't see that on a lot of the boats. They're painted over, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He picked the colors on it. He has an eye for colors, and even the water line being a light blue versus the green.
Right.
So he knows how it's supposed to look.
Yeah, that's a nice looking boat. You know, and of course they made models of regular boats, if you will, and then race boats. And this one here looks more like a race boat.
That's what it is, and this is made by the ITO company. It's the G7 model.
G7.
And this particular one has also been touched up but not fully restored by John Guest down in Arkansas.
Okay.
And the basic condition was very good, so he didn't want to do a lot of work on it.
Right.
But he
Keep it authentic.
keep it authentic. He does clean up all the parts, and they just look spectacular. They shine more than any ones I've seen. The G7 was still in good paint job, so he didn't do any painting on the deck.
Okay.
He did paint the bottom the red. But this particular one is in just excellent shape.
Yes.
This, again, has the bubble windshield, but it did have to be cut in particular to match the ribbing on the deck.
Oh, it did.
Yep. And you've got the matching color on the pink seats, too.
Now this would have the bigger batters in it than some of the smaller boats too, right? Probably a D cell as opposed to a C.
This
Got
has
a lot more mass here to move.
Yes, this has 4 D-cell batteries.
Oh boy, 4.
And
yeah.
this steering wheel is ornamental. It is not an on and off switch. The on and off switch is the lever switch in the front here.
All right. Yeah, that's a nice looking boat. And we've got one final boat here.
This is a special boat.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This was made for me, in particular,
Oh, it was.
by Jim in Arlington, Texas. And he loves picking the colors. He designed this, and this is a treat because it runs.
Wow. Look at that.
And if the camera can pick up, it has the lights in the front. Now, this is called, he calls it the rocket boat.
Rocket
Don't have to yell at you. He calls it the rocket boat. And he added the eyes on the front, similar to the Japanese dragon boat.
Okay.
But all of this was, he took the body of a pre-made boat from Japan and added the fins. That is not normal. And there's even,
okay.
there's a light in the back of the boat that lights up also.
Oh, there is.
So he asked me what colors, and I said, Jim, you go ahead and do it the way you want.
Yeah.
And he just comes up with the perfect color matching design.
That's a very unusual looking boat.
Very unusual,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a beauty. That's a beauty. Well, Fred, you know it's hard to believe, but we've run out of time in the show today. We've seen some really interesting boats, you know, from different areas and different styles and different features. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up the show today?
I would. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for coming and taking the time to videotape this. I'm hoping that other people who are interested in the boats will see this and get in touch with either you. How I got in touch with most people was on eBay. I would lose a boat to them, and they would send me an email and make contact with me, and we have become famous friends, and I've bought boats from them, and I've traded with them. Another way is a group called toyoutboardmotors.com. It's run by a fellow by the name of Bob McDonald down in Queens, New York. He's a judge down there. It's on the internet. He concentrates on the toy outboard motors as well as the boats, and that's a great place to meet people who have similar interests. And I thought I was the only one that collected model boats, and I learned that I'm not.
All right, well, it's a great hobby. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thank you, Smart Boating viewers, for joining us on this show. If you have comments or questions, come visit us at our website, www.smartboatingus.com. Thank you.